I'm honored to be joined today by attorney, author, and noted television personality Star Jones. 10 years ago, Star became the American Heart Association's national ambassador when she experienced her own open heart surgery adventure that I know she's going to talk with us a little bit more about. And then she went on to compete on the NBC television Celebrity Apprentice program on our behalf. And she managed to raise more than $300,000 on the premiere episode of that in support of our mission. She also raised more than just a little awareness. Now, some of you may have heard bits and pieces about Star's journey, but we're going to talk a little bit about that today because she's, in the time since her experience, her journey, and the way in which she came into contact with us, she's been paying it forward by empowering new generations of women to know their risk of cardiovascular disease. And today we're going to reflect on her commitment to our organization and learn a little bit more about the time that she spent since her experience. What keeps her energized? And I know she's going to talk to us about focus and her work, because as she'll tell you, heart health matters and it remains a front-burning issue for everybody everywhere. We don't need Star to remind us that 1 in 3 women will die of cardiovascular disease. It's the leading killer. A note before we begin, we'll have a chance to take questions from our friends who are here in the live audience at the American Heart Association offices in Dallas, as well as those who are watching on the internet, whether they're our staff who are watching on live stream or whether they're our friends who are watching on LinkedIn. And if you're watching on LinkedIn or on the live stream and you want to submit a question, whatever platform you're using, there's a way to submit that question. So, with no further ado, let's get going. And Star Jones, welcome to the American Heart Association. And thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Well, I actually feel like I should be welcoming some of you because I've been here for 10 years. This is like my home. The American Heart Association is literally what wakes me up in the morning. It's the reason I can wake up every morning now in a heart-healthy situation. So I'm home right now.
Well, we're reminded that it's been 10 years since you had your experience. How are you feeling and how are you doing?
I actually am in probably the best health that I've ever been in my whole life. Emotionally perfect. I am a newlywed wife and a new mother of a 14-year-old son who seems to think I'm the cat's meow, so I'm very happy right there. And health-wise, according to the eminent Dr. Valentine Fuster, the former president of the American Heart Association, who is my cardiologist, who diagnosed my heart disease, I am one of the few people in America in good heart health.
Congratulations.
Yes, I brag about that. I have to tell you, though, for the vast majority of my life, I thought my law degree was my greatest asset. And, you know, Saturday Night Live does it best, Tracy Morgan, because, you know, I'm a lawyer, you know. And he used to pick on me all the time because I wore it like a badge of honor. Well, my new badge of honor is I'm a heart disease survivor. So, you know, I'm a heart disease survivor and a heart disease thriver, okay? Because I have made heart disease that badge of honor. This little zipper down the center of my chest means I'm still here and still I rise, and it's my job to do the same thing for other women.
Well, before we look forward, maybe we could just take a moment to look back and help some of us who might be watching who aren't as intimately familiar with your story. It always helps to hear the story. Would you mind sharing it briefly again?
You know, absolutely. I'll go back to really before the diagnosis. For my entire adult life, and I do mean my adult life, from the time I was 18 years old in college till I was 41 years old, I was obese or morbidly obese. There came a time where for my 40th birthday, I had 40 girlfriends come with me to the Caribbean for a big blowout celebration. And I was completely overweight. I was obese at that time, but in the year between my 40th birthday and my 41st, I think I gained 75 pounds. So as of the time of my 41st birthday, I was topping the scales somewhere around 300 pounds. I stopped weighing myself. And a friend of mine came to me and said, you know, I'm so worried about your health. I'm afraid that I'm going to not have heard from you for a couple of days and then come over to your apartment and you died from a heart attack or a stroke. She said, we got to do something. And I think I made up my mind right then and there that I needed help, I needed an intervention. So I spoke with my doctors, and one of them happened to be a cardiologist, Dr. Valentine Fuster, because in order to have a medical intervention, you have to have a series of doctors, at least back then, that could say, you know, you can be successful, but these are the things you're going to need to do. And when I tell you I embraced that change relentlessly. So I prepared myself for what the changes would be. And on the day of weight loss surgery, I weighed 307 pounds. And I will never forget feeling, as a former prosecutor, I will not allow my family and friends to get an autopsy report that says morbidly obese black woman dead. I was not going to have that on my autopsy under any circumstances. So I was going to make the changes. The surgery was very successful. The first year after weight loss surgery, I lost 80 pounds, which we attribute to the weight loss surgery. But that's when the star had to kick in. And I changed my diet, changed my lifestyle. I started walking instead of riding, and trust me, I have never met a driver I did not love. So me walking was a big deal. I took up a sport. Of course, I picked the one that I could wear cute clothes, so it took tennis. And I really changed my life. So over the course of that next year, within 2 years, I had lost 160 pounds. I lost a whole human being. And so my body was feeling good. But in reality, it had masked symptoms that I didn't know anything about. And that's something that I really want people to understand about obesity. It can mask what's going on in the rest of your body because you attribute everything that you're feeling to I'm big, I'm overweight. That's why my heart's beating too fast, or that's why I can't breathe, or that's why I feel lethargic. Well, I wasn't overweight at that point. I was not obese. And I was playing tennis, I was doing spin class, I was taking Pilates, I was making good food choices, and I started to notice some shortness of breath. I was feeling really fatigued, and not that sort of I'm so busy and fabulous, I'm tired fatigue. No, I can't get out of bed fatigue. When I would go from seated to standing too quickly, I would get lightheaded. And I knew those weren't symptoms that I should be having because I was healthy in my mind. After years and years of not taking care of myself, of being sedentary, of being lethargic, of literally sitting on my rear end, I said, well, you know what? This is not right, and I'm going to figure out what it is. So I remember very distinctly, I had to go to lunch with some girlfriends in Manhattan. So I fit Valentine Fuster into my schedule, okay? Don't ever tell him that part of the story. I show up at Mount Sinai Hospital in these 5-inch Jimmy Choo boots, leather pants. This was January, I'll never forget it. Fur coat, lashes, and the whole 9 yards, okay? So I walk in there, Dr. Fuster, I'm just not feeling well. I don't know what's going on. So can you tell me? Now, interestingly enough, about 6 months earlier, I had had some fluid around my heart. And they sent me up to the cath lab, and they drained it. And he said, let's do an echo. And so, of course, we did the echocardiogram. And I was so used to that. Test didn't bother me, so I'm in there just flitting around. And then the thing that you hate is when the technician says, I'm going to go get Dr. Fuster, and he'll be right back to explain things to you. So I'm like, okay, now you got to get the boss, so I know something's up. So he comes in and he tells me, I'm a little concerned. There appears to probably be some fluid back around your heart, and it shouldn't have happened in the last 6 months. So I want to send you to the cath lab, and I want to drain it. So I arrogantly said, well, I'll come back after lunch. Not a problem. We'll just do it then. He said, no, we're going to do it now. I said, well, right now? I have to make changes. He said, yeah, you do. So we're going to go upstairs and we're going to take care of it now. I said, okay, well, what floor? And I remember putting the coat on my arm. What floor? And he goes, sit in a wheelchair. I went, oh, hell no, I'm not getting wheeled through Mount Sinai. Are you kidding me? And he said, you're getting in the wheelchair. That's serious. I knew right there something was wrong. So they wheeled me up to the cath lab. They extract literally 1 liter of fluid from around my heart on that day. And Fooster and I really want to all the people that talk to physicians and clinicians, he was relentless. It wasn't enough for him to take that fluid. He said, this should not have come back. Something else is wrong. So I'm going to admit you. And for 2 days, I had a series of tests. The single worst test in the history of the world, the transesophageal echocardiogram. I'll never forget it. The fact that I still know how to say it is ridiculous. But at the end of those 2 days, there were a myriad of things wrong with my heart. They discovered I had a subaortic membrane, and that because of my sedentary lifestyle for so many years, my aorta had stopped functioning correctly, was not opening and closing the way it was supposed to, that I had the blood flow was not working the way it was supposed to. I'll never forget, I called my best friend, who is my internist, and I said, Holly, they say something is wrong. What? And she said, well, what does Fooster say? And Dr. Fooster said, we're going to need to do open heart surgery. I'm not even sure that I heard it correctly. We're going to need to do open heart surgery. And I said, what do you mean open heart surgery? He says, you have heart disease. I literally looked at him and said, heart disease is an old white guy's disease. What are you talking about? I'm not an old white dude. I don't eat steak every day. What are you talking about? I don't smoke cigars. It's not my disease. He said, no, it is. And we're going to need to do open heart surgery. And I said, well, are we talking, the new kind I've been reading about? Because, I'm a reporter, so where I think you go through the armpit or something. He said, no, Star. We're going to have to crack your chest. I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to feel like when somebody tells me that. I remember sitting in his office, and the rest of it I don't remember. I remember calling my friend Dr. Holly Phillips and saying, Fooster says I have to have open heart surgery. She said, why? I said, according to him, my aortic valve is so damaged, they're going to need to try to repair it. And if they can't repair it, they're going to have to replace it. And I have to start to think about animal valve versus mechanical valve. It was just overwhelming. It was too much. I did what any self-respecting girl with a valid credit card would do. I got on a plane and went to the Bahamas. I literally put my head in the sand. I remember telling Brooks this the first time, and he told me I could write it in my presentation. I said I went to the Bahamas because they didn't have heart disease down there. They had shirtless men and champagne and parties, and that's what I was going to do. I was not going to be dealing with no heart disease. And my girlfriends were on the trip with me, and they said, take your behind back to New York and deal with it. So, Star took over. I came back. Dr. Fooster discovered that my iron count was low, so we had to work on that. So I had to have 8 weeks to fortify my blood, and then we scheduled it for March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. Of course, you're the communications guy, you can appreciate. I said, there's going to be too much going on in New York for the media to pay any attention to me, so that'll be a really good day to schedule it, okay?
On page 5?
No, page 6. So we scheduled it for March 17th with the one stipulation. I said, Valentine, my birthday is March 24th, and I will be home for my 48th birthday. He said, yeah, you will. introduced me to the most brilliant thoracic surgeon, Dr. Paul Stelzer, who, you know, heart doctors, they're gods for all practical purposes. And this man was so humble and beautiful. It's really, all of it came together. Dr. Stelzer prayed with me before we went into the operating theater. That's just the kind of man he is. He brought Western and Eastern medicine in with spirituality because he knew that was important to me. And I can say that I had my heart out of my body for 22 minutes. My heart was stopped. And 6 days later, I walked out of that hospital. In the same Jimmy Choo boots.
And we are so privileged to be with you today and to see what has happened in the time since then. So flash forward, I'm sitting here struck by the remarkable clarity with which you were able to remember and repeat every single detail. As you look back on that experience, was there any surprises? Were there any surprises for you?
Emotionally, it was a big surprise. I've always been in charge of everything in my life, and I think that's something that other heart disease survivors can understand. You feel very helpless, that somebody else is now going to be in control. And I remember such a silly thing at this point, but the first 3 days, I don't remember anything. They gave me whatever that drug is, Versed or something that helps you not remember whatever pain you're in. And my first conscious moment, I remember saying, I want a bacon cheeseburger, sincerely. And I started to almost have a panic attack that I insisted that I wanted a bacon cheeseburger. And my friend who was there at the hospital with me, he was having a panic attack that he thought I had gone crazy. And so he had the nurses call Dr. Fuster. And Dr. Fuster said, go get her a bacon cheeseburger. And so, of course, my friend Herb thought Fuster was crazy. He said, go get her a bacon cheeseburger. So they went, they got me a bacon cheeseburger. I put it in my hand. I took one bite. I slept for 8 hours. Valentine wanted to give me my control back. He was just so sensitive enough to know that I needed to take control. Of course, I couldn't eat a bacon cheeseburger 3 days after open heart surgery, but I wanted to have control. So I wasn't prepared for that. I also wasn't prepared for the aftermath. Open heart surgery saved my life, but cardiac rehab gave me my life back. If you have a heart event, you must do rehabilitation. It has been really something that I have championed here at the American Heart Association because not enough women are told about it. Not enough people are told about it, but women especially. Women think they can just go back to their life. Well, your life is changed a bit. I can tell you. I was so afraid to walk down the street the first time. And I was with the physical therapist, and she said, why are you walking so gingerly? I had on the tennis shoes and the sweatsuit, and I said, I'm just so afraid. I started to cry. I said, I'm so afraid that I'm going to fall and crack my chest. And she said, you're 48 years old? I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, how many times in the 48 years have you spontaneously fallen and cracked your chest? And I started to laugh. She said, that's not what's going to happen. So stop being so afraid. And I attacked rehab the way I attacked open heart surgery. 3 months of intense cardiac rehabilitation. It's the most intense boot camp you'll ever go through. I could barely walk from that door to that door when I started. And you don't graduate until you can do a sub-max workout. And at the end of 3 months, I could work for 50 minutes with 1-minute intervals every 7 minutes. And then afterwards, I walked the 14 blocks back to my apartment, 3 months after open heart surgery.
We are thrilled for you for that. So if I may, with your permission, probe a little bit about your how you came to be associated with the American Heart Association. Because I just listened to you tell your tale, and you very specifically said you were not interested in attracting attention to your event, and yet you had the opportunity to do the Apprentice.
Actually, it came before then because while I was in the hospital, I started, doing all kinds of research on heart disease, and all I could see was white dudes as the face. Letterman, white dude. Bill Clinton, I love him, but white dude. Larry King, really old white dude. Also all the faces of heart disease. There were no other faces. And people weren't talking about it. And I learned it's the #1 killer of all women, the #1 killer of African Americans, at the time, the #1 killer of all Americans. I learned that, and I'm like, I'm 3 for 3. What are you talking about? I got the phone number for the American Heart Association, and I called here. Not an assistant, no, but I didn't speak to, I wanted to talk to you. I called the American Heart Association. I said, this is Star Jones. I've just had open heart surgery, and I'm the new face of heart disease. I want to volunteer. Now, the funniest thing is, I don't think they thought it was really me. Because for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, I didn't get, shall we say, a response. Well, what do I do when I don't get a response from the Heart Association? I called Valentine. Dr. Fooster, I don't think they want me. He said, oh no, they want you. So he made a call, and the next thing you know, I was going to be a face for the American Heart Association. To whom much is given, much is required. God kept me here for a reason, and it's not to be able to get a good table at a great restaurant in New York. It's use your name, use your platform to open people's eyes to their #1 risk. I need to shout it from the rooftop, because if I, Miss Smarty Pants, who's the reporter, who's supposed to know all of this stuff, did not know it was my greatest risk, did not know it was the #1 killer of women, did not know it was the #1 killer of African Americans, what do I expect for other people? So I made it my business right then and there. No matter if you wanted me or not, you got me. I'm the face of heart disease.
So tell us about the Apprentice. How did that come to pass?
So he who shall not be named begged me for many years to do Celebrity Apprentice. We've known each other for over 2 decades. His family and I were friends, and they begged me, and I had no reason to. I didn't want to do reality television, but after open heart surgery, I thought, well, I can use you, because Celebrity Apprentice was a primetime show on NBC with a great rating and a lot of attention. And I thought, if I play for the American Heart Association every single week in prime time, women's heart disease is on the front burner. It's something that we all can talk about. It's something that I can explain, and I can raise money. And so I plotted. I mean, in every aspect of it. My opening shot for Celebrity Apprentice, I put heart cufflinks on. I made sure that throughout the filming, I always talked about the things that I need to do to change my lifestyle, what I was eating, exercising, so that I emphasize what living with heart disease looked like. I don't think people realize that I shot Celebrity Apprentice 6 months after open heart surgery. So all of that was done 6 months after. And I wanted people to see you can live with heart disease. You can thrive, not just be a heart disease survivor, but a heart disease thriver. And the first episode, again, plotting, I knew that if you jump right in, you're going to get the most attention. And I jumped right in. I was whatever the captain of the team was, and our team won. The girls' team won, and we raised $175,000 that episode, and it was the most money raised in the first episode ever. And I wanted to make sure I could highlight the American Heart Association, so AHA and your communications team, the brilliant, the most wonderful, loving baby brother that I've ever known, Brooks Lancaster, made all of the arrangements to connect with Dr. Fooster. The poor Dr. Fooster didn't know what he was getting himself into, but he was going to accept the check. But it wasn't enough for me. So I asked the AHA if we could, when the Celebrity Apprentice premiered, if we could do a fundraising event so that I could try to double it, and I did, $350,000. And at the time, it was a pretty big donation, especially for an African-American woman. Since then, however, I think it's fair to say we've now raised millions. So I'm very happy about that.
Thank you so very much. And of course, well-known people such as yourself are afforded many opportunities to do many interesting and wonderful things for many great causes. The Celebrity Apprentice opportunity came and went, and yet you chose to stay connected to the American Heart Association. Why?
There's a zipper down the center of my chest. You don't have a choice. When God tells you this is your purpose, you either walk in your purpose or God might decide to take it back, okay? So I walk in my purpose. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Nobody needs to thank me. I'm like, thank you, okay? No, I'm here because this is very personal to me. I wake up in the morning thinking about heart disease. I go to bed at night thinking about heart disease. If I get the opportunity to be in any room, I'm advocating for heart health. Today, I was blessed to be a part of a philanthropic panel with our wonderful CEO, Nancy. I was there to support her as she did the Fireside chat with the former model, Christy Turlington, who is a major philanthropist. We get through the whole morning. Christy and I were going to have the girlfriend celebrity bonding moment. I take that opportunity to say, you know, Christy, since you were talking about maternal mortality, there are studies that connect heart disease, as you and Nancy were just discussing. I host a major donors luncheon in New York during Heart Month. I would love to have you co-host with me. Nancy, don't you think that's a great idea? Nancy, immediately, yes, I think it's a great idea. At the end of the day, Christy Turlington and I are going to be hosting the major donors conversation, okay? Because that is relentlessly going after heart disease. You better use every platform you have.
So relentlessly going after heart disease as a volunteer over the last 10 years, I imagine it's taken you some interesting places. Capitol Hill, media luncheons,
Anchorage, Alaska. How I let Brooks talk me into Anchorage, Alaska in February. But hey, they got heart disease in Anchorage, Alaska. So I went there to support the Go Red movement in Alaska. I've been all over this country on behalf of AHA, small towns, big towns, hosting luncheons, giving keynote speeches, doing commercials, and simply talking to other volunteers. Don't think just the sitting down here and having the conversation or raising the money is the only way that volunteerism works. The real work is in the field. It's the survivors who put their experience out there for others to learn from, to use as an example, inspiration, and then the heart healthy person is aspirational. And so my work with AHA has taken me all over to meet a variety of people, especially women of all ages, young girls that were born with a hole in their heart, athletic women in their 20s who had a stroke just in the middle of the day after yoga, men who ran marathons, older women who want to get to be even older because they've been taking care of themselves. My own grandmother had a triple bypass. My mother, sadly, a year and a half ago, passed away from cardiovascular disease. This is personal, and it will just be my mission, just like other volunteers. I always say I'm not special when it comes to AHA volunteerism. I just have a bigger mouth and a bigger platform. That's it. So I represent the millions of people who are volunteering out there that you may not know their names, but trust me, you know their work.
And we're going to talk, because I think we can get a lot of insight from you, particularly our colleagues across the country who are looking to connect with and motivate volunteers. And we would invite them and anyone else who's watching on the line or in the room to submit questions or raise your hand if you'd like to, in the room, ask a question to Star. But as we contemplate that, let me ask you, what keeps you energized? Because we certainly haven't been shy about asking you to do things on our behalf, and you've clearly not been shy about your willingness to do things on our behalf. Still, what keeps you energized?
The AHA team here is amazing. Your team of Leslie and her team, and then Nancy she is my mentor when it comes to philanthropy and the kind of work that she does. So AHA has kept me motivated. But one of my very favorite things to do, and I know I sound like a complete nerd, is scientific sessions, because the cures are going to be found in the research. And I am excited every time I get to go to sessions and hear what's coming down the pike, hear what's about to start. I get frustrated because I've been involved with the AHA so long now. There are a couple of issues that still frustrate me. The fact that research for and about women is still not at the levels it needs to be. Women are not smaller men. We are our own entity, and it's absolutely imperative that there be research as to our heart disease. The diversity and inclusion is not where I want it to be with AHA, because heart disease disproportionately affects African American, especially African American women. Health equities are issues that we get to talk about. I am so proud of the AHA putting it on the front burner with our president as well as our CEO. This is absolutely something that the AHA is relentless about. Legislative issues that other people are now coming to, the issue of vaping, AHA was on from the beginning. I'm proud to be a part of an organization that really puts boots to the ground. So I'm energized because every time I am advocating for AHA, AHA is advocating for me, advocating for other women. And that's really volunteerism. It's the reason you get up in the morning. I said to you, you have to walk in your purpose. You often don't know what your purpose is until you're actually walking in it. But I figured it out. Purpose is, for everybody, is to serve. Your job is to figure out what best way you can serve. And I figured out my best way to serve is through the Heart Association.
And to that point, Mike from LinkedIn has just submitted a question about his concerns, I'm paraphrasing now, about the absence or the shortage of the number of black men volunteering. How would you speak to that? What would you recommend? What insights or guidance might you suggest?
Well, it's something that I've talked about numerous times. You have to meet people where they are. It's important to have volunteers who look like and have the same experience. It's one of the reasons why I told a story of my obesity when we first started. Because when I start talking about heart disease, I don't want people to think that I did everything right. I want people to hear I take full responsibility for that which I did not do right. And I think once you hear me say that and admit it, you can hear me. You know, I'm not some skinny girl that you're sitting there going, oh yeah, you've been skinny all your life, so now you're going to tell me about my weight? No. I had struggles. And I use that as an example because in order to get African American men involved, they need to see and hear other African American men talk about their experiences with heart disease. Heart disease is not, something that people want to, quote, brag about. Because in your mind, you think it makes you weak. I don't know why, but I've reversed it. It makes me strong because I'm a survivor and a thriver. I know I'm in better health right now than I was before open heart surgery. I'm absolutely positive of it, and it's not my opinion. That's one of the best cardiologists in the world's opinion. So I think we need to get more people who are willing to tell their story and turn that story into a positive. Cardiac rehab really and truly will help in that regard. Once you feel like you have your life back, you want to share that joy. So I would say, first of all, we have to get more like-minded people involved, telling their story, and we have to meet them where they are and not expect everybody to call you on the phone from the hospital bed.
What advice do you have for our staff and volunteers on the ground in communities across the country who are looking for stories like yours?
Make sure that you are willing to, again, meet them where they are. And I don't mean going into a particular area. It's just listen to what the story is, listen to what the circumstances are. Know that when we talk about volunteering, food deserts are a big deal, okay? And the amount of money that people can spend on nutrition is a big deal. How we exercise is a big deal. When we talk about making recommendations for a healthier lifestyle, we recommend you don't always have to recommend going to a gym, belonging to a gym. Walking clubs are a good recommendation. So be creative in your advocacy and know that everybody who is a potential volunteer doesn't come to volunteerism with all of the same resources, but can be still helpful.
Again, we welcome questions from anybody who's with us here in Dallas Live or watching on the internet. For several years now, you've been running a publicly traded company that advocates for diversity in the workplace. What have you been up to there? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, IPDN is a job resource and networking social platform for women, for networking and professionalism, and then for job seekers. And we've redefined diversity. It's not just the races, African Americans, Asians, and Latinas. It also includes the LGBT community, the disabled, veterans, and the largest diverse group, which is women. And so for the last 7 years, I've been advocating for job diversity because I look at diversity and inclusion. First of all, I've added equity, so it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. I look at it as a business imperative, not just something that makes you feel good. Sort of like heart disease and heart health. You're not just doing it because, oh, this is a great charity. You're doing it because living longer, healthier lives is the best thing for our whole society. It's the same thing for diversity and inclusion. Having diverse opinions around the table gives for more innovation, more creativity, better ideas, new technology. I learn more from people who I don't have things in common with, that don't go to the same church that I go to, don't shop at the same grocery store that I shop at, might not even politically be the same as I am. But sitting around a table working on a project, we have that in common. And that's the way I believe businesses should run, associations should run, society should run. And I've been really relentless in working in that area also.
Well, and it's clear that we won't be able to address the problem of ensuring that everybody everywhere has access to longer, healthier lives, to health care, and to quality of life writ large until and unless we can figure that problem out.
100%. I say that DEI is a business imperative because if you think about it for a minute, you really want to serve your clients and your customers with a workforce that is reflective of the consumer base. Same thing here at AHA. You want to serve the people who are most in need with a workforce that is reflective of your consumer base. And the more we can do that, the more inclusive it becomes, and better ideas, more creativity, more innovation. And it benefits all of us. Your employees are happier, your clients and your customers feel serviced, and that returns shareholder value. That's just a basic business principle.
More challenging nowadays to deliver that message, you think?
You know, it's challenging to deliver it, but I have found that more people are talking about it, and it's one reason why at the end of the year, I am going to give up my corporate position and finally create the consulting business that allows me to bring all of that to bear. Because if there's anything I know how to do, it's inspire people to change.
There's absolutely no question about that. You know, one of the great benefits for those of us who are sitting here with you in person is that this is the professional staff of the American Heart Association, and we draw inspiration from real people who've lived the real experiences. And can you give us advice or guidance as professional staff who are professionally committed to trying to solve these problems?
Keep doing what you do. I am so humbled and so proud to work for you. I think about it a lot. I remember the first time I sat in scientific sessions, and one of the studies that were being celebrated was about a drug called metoprolol. And I sat there shaking because I know that is the drug that they prescribed for me after my open heart surgery. It's the drug I still have in my purse right now. It's the beta blocker that I wouldn't have but for the research of the American Heart Association. I wouldn't have known about PET therapy. I didn't want to be dependent on pharmaceuticals the rest of my life. I take that baby aspirin like I'm supposed to. I take Synthroid because my thyroid is still a little jumpy. And Dr. Fuster says there's going to come a time when you won't need the beta blockers as much. You'll know. And we started with PET therapy. I get a prescription of 30 pills a day, 30 pills a month. This is the 29th of the month. There are 24 of them still in my purse because I haven't needed them. I'm telling you, what you do changes people's lives, helps to fund the research, inspires the volunteers, literally saves lives. I'm not sure if you fully appreciate that the hundreds of thousands, millions of heart disease survivors will be forever in your debt. But for the AHA, we wouldn't be here. So keep doing what you're doing.
Well, you continue to be remarkably busy, and yet you continue to contribute remarkably to the American Heart Association. When they write the legacy of Star Jones, what will it say?
She who has health has hope. And she who had hope had everything she ever needed.
And what final words would you leave for this audience of American Heart Association staff and volunteers who are watching on the internet?
I would say that heart disease can kill you, but it can also make you so much better, because then you got stuff to live for, and you better use every single day to say thank you, show gratitude, and pay it forward.
Can't top that. Thank you, Star
Thank
Jones,
y'all very much
for being with us. Let's
having
give a
me.
hand to our special guest, Star Jones,
Thank you for having
for
me.
sharing your experience, for helping remind us why we do what we do, and perhaps giving us some insight with respect to how we can do better with and by our volunteers. Thanks to everybody that joined us here in Dallas. Thanks to all of you who might be watching on the internet. If you want to get involved with the American Heart Association, if you want to learn more, you can visit heart.org/volunteer to learn more about it. Thank you, Star Jones, for everything.
Thank you all
and thank
very
all of you
much.
for being with us.
Thank you.